So today we will go very quickly through MongoDB. Why? Because, okay, we only have 8 as well. So the objective is just go through all the check-in here so you don't miss anything. Most of the information, it will be just some advice, something like that, just to cover this all information so we can close your check-in issue. So the first point here is JSON and object in JavaScript. Are JSON and an object in JavaScript, are they the same or they are different? Last question for you. So is JavaScript object and JSON, they are similar, they are different? How they are different, how they are similar? Any idea?
They are different.
Cool.
So like JSON, it should be all in string, the key and the value. In JavaScript, it's not the point.
Well, in JavaScript, we can have string as well, but there's a point here. String in JSON always surrounded by double quote. In JavaScript, it should be single quote. But that's okay. Okay, so let's go see the difference between them now. We have object in JavaScript. Now, object in JavaScript, they are normally stored in the memory. When you create an object, it will be stored in the heap, as we learned. So it will be stored in the heap as we learned before. But the idea now here, with JSON here, just JavaScript object notation. There is huge difference between the two. Now we use JSON now around maybe 95% of the web is using JSON format to transmit or transfer data mostly between the front end and the back end. Now the syntax here, JavaScript object, we know the syntax. For JSON, we know the syntax as well. And in JSON all the time, he has a difference between string in JSON and JavaScript. Is in JavaScript object, you can have single or double quote. In JSON, all property must be double quoted if they are stringy. Data type is super important. There is difference between the data type on JavaScript object and JSON. So in JavaScript object, you can have whatever you want to. You can have undefined, you can have function, you can have number, whatever you want to. But in JSON, actually, the only data type we can have string, and string, as I told you, must be surrounded by double quote. We could have numbers, which is okay. We could have object inside another object, that's fine. We could have array, we could have Boolean and null. So here in JSON, we can't have undefined. It's not possible. This data type in JSON does not exist. Function in JSON does not exist, as you can see. Now, this comparison between two, or the difference between two, is super important. You need to understand it. So again, in JSON, the only data types that are allowed is our string, a double quote. You can have numbers, it's okay. You can have object inside objects, that's fine, or array inside an array, that's fine. You could have a Boolean, that's fine. Null, it's okay. You cannot have undefined. You cannot have method or function inside JSON. Is the idea clear? Yes? No?
Yes.
Okay, I've already shared the note with you, so it's fine. Method here, so of course we can have method inside our object. In JSON, we cannot have method. Use cases, so we use JavaScript most of the time to store and manipulate the data. So that's why we use object and arrays in JavaScript in general. But in JSON, most of the time, as you can see, we use it to transmit or transfer data between the front end and the back end. So we use it with API. Here, a small example. So that could be an object in JavaScript. As you can see, we have a method, we have age, we have number, we have a string here. But this string, as you can see here, is single quote, that's fine. But when it comes to JSON, as you can see, the name here must be surrounded by double quote, and the age, and if this string, it must be double quote. Of course, we could have a number, as I told you, we could have a number, we could have an array, we could have an object, we could have a Boolean, that's fine, we could have a null. That's the only data types that are allowed in JSON. Parsing, of course, in JavaScript here, we don't have to parse the object because it's already available. JavaScript understands the object, it can deal with it. But now when we receive JSON from our backend, what we need to do in JavaScript, we need to parse this data. If we don't parse this data, parsing means we are converting JSON into JavaScript object or JavaScript array. And that's the reason why we need to parse our data all the time. So whenever we receive data from our backend, we need to parse our data, JSON.parse, in order to convert it into JavaScript object or array, and like that we can manipulate the data. That's simply how it is. Of course, because we are using Axios, Axios doing this job for us. So actually, we don't have to parse anything because Axios, what is doing here is automatically parsing the data. We don't have to worry about that. But if you are not using Axios, you are using Fetch, you need to parse your data. Comment, of course, you could have a comment in JavaScript in general, or inside the object is either to double forward slash for a single line comment, or multi-line comment. It would be slash asterisk slash. We cannot have we does not have comment, or we cannot have a comment inside JSON. So that's key difference between the two here. And now my question for you, if we go to where is it? If you go to here, and I open my MongoDB, and I connect to my cluster. Let's just do this one. And I'll just connect to my cluster. Now let's go to Amazon, for example, item here. Okay, now if we have a look at this data here, as you can see, they look very similar to JSON, right? Yes. My question for you now, is that JSON or not? So is the data stored in MongoDB? Are they in JSON format or another format? Don't tell me I don't know. Guess.
JSON?
Yeah, it look like they're in JSON format. Yes. Who else? You can guess. It's fine.
But in JSON, the key should be in string, but here are not in a string.
But it's not just about string. In JSON, do we have something called object ID? I've just show you what the type of data we can have in JSON. So in JSON, as you can see, if I go to JSON here, we only have string, number, object, which is a normal object, array, boolean, and null. And my question now for you is, do we have object ID in JSON?
Yes.
In JSON, do we have object ID?
Yes.
By the way, object ID here, it's data type. This object ID is a data type. So object ID here, it's a data type. Well, I'll make it simple. Normally, when we send the data to the backend, of course, it will be in form of JSON. But what MongoDB is doing, and that's the reason why actually it's being used a lot, and it's very fast. So MongoDB team realized that using JSON, it just provides me with very simple data. So as you can see, string, number, object, array, boolean, and null. So they decided, oh, that's not gonna fulfill our need. So maybe what we can do here, we can add a little bit more data type, little bit more property, and after that we can store the data. And that's what we call BSON, simply like that. So what is BSON? BSON is just simply JSON, but in binary form. Binary just means 0 or 1, 0 or 1 when you store them. So here, what's the difference between JSON and BSON? Well, JSON is if I take JSON and add some little bit more data type, little bit more property, it will become BSON, simply like that. Now, because BSON is binary, and by binary I mean 0 and 1s, it will be much faster to store them and much faster to retrieve them, because they are just in binary form. So the computer just understands, MongoDB understands them as 0 and 1, saves them as 0 and 1s. And because they are 0 and 1s, retrieving them and saving them, it will be much faster. Is the idea clear? I try to explain the easiest way possible. Is the idea clear or not?
Yes.
Good. Okay, now let's compare JSON and BSON. I told you BSON is just JSON, but with more property, let's say, more data type, let's say. Now, of course, we have string in JSON. We have string also in BSON. We have number in JSON, but in BSON, as you can see, we have different type of numbers. So we have N32, we have N64, we have double, and we have decimal 128. Can anyone tell me what is N32? What do I mean by N32?
Integer, 32
Yes.
characters?
No, 32 bit. So this here, this number for bit. So bit here, it's in computer, bit is just either 0 or 1, 0 or 1. 8-bit, we call it. What do we call 8-bit? We call 8-bit. If we combine 8-bit, we call it, come on guys, byte. We call it byte. Okay, bit and byte. So if I go to the computer here, let me just see if I can find nice image to show you. Voila. So in computer, normally, just show me the stuff here. Voila. In computer, as you can see, this one we call it a bit. A bit is very piece of memory, can store only two value. Either it can store 1 or it can 0. Either 1 or 0. That's what we call it binary. So here, that's the bit. It's just small piece of memory, can store either 1 or 0. Now, the idea here, we never deal with bits. Why? Because bits is a very, very small piece of memory. So normally we gather 8 bits together, and 8 bit together, we call it byte. So that's what we call. Now, if I go, I tell you now what is your RAM, you will tell me giga. And giga, that means gigabyte. We don't use bit because bit is very small. So the smallest unit we use in our programming language is byte actually. And byte simply is 8 bit. That's it. Now, when I say 32, that means it's 32 bit. If I divide 32 on 8, how much it will give me? 32 divided by 8, how much it will give me? 32 by 8? It's 5, right? You are sleeping? Hello?
It's 4.
Are you sure? 32 divided by, let me see. You forget even the division.
No, it's 4, it's 4.
Are you sure? 32 divided by 8. And you are right, it's 4. And now 4 means, that means this number here, it will take 4 byte. And 4 byte, of course, that means this number can be huge. Now, the more byte I have, the more bigger number I can store. And if I go 64, same idea. If I go here and divide 64 with 8, now it gives me 8. That's 8 bytes. That means 64 can store a number which is a huger number comparing to 32. So why? Because 32 only have 4 bytes, but this one 8, as you can see. So 64 can also store very, very huge number. So the more bytes, that means the more space I have, that means the more or the huger number I can save, as you can see. Double normally and decimal, we use them with floating points. That means if I have, for example, 10 point something. Here, int, we cannot have point. So it must be like integer, whole number. But double and decimal, we can have a floating point here. So for example, 10 million point something and so on. So as you can see here in JSON, we just have numbers, just like in JavaScript. But when it comes to JSON, we have different actually data type here. We could use int32, which take 4 bytes. We can, if the number is very huge, even more, we can use int64, which can store up to 8 bytes. And we could use double normally take up to 8 bytes by default, 8 bytes. And yeah, 4 to 8. And decimal here is telling you 128, and you can just divide 128 over 8 as well. So 128 divided by 8, and it can store up to 16 bytes. So that means super huge and very accurate number. Is the idea clear here, guys? Yes, no? You don't need to worry about that because you're never going to use them. That's not important for you because MongoDB does this conversion for you. You don't have to worry about anything. You are seeing JSON, MongoDB just convert JSON to JSON, and after that stores the data. And when I retrieve the data, it just gives you JSON simply like that. So you really don't need to worry about all of those, but the idea, you need to understand how it is stored actually. Yes? Yes, no? Am I explaining the rocket something, or you're it's not interested, or you don't want to?
Don't know, it's fine.
Okay. In JSON, we have object. Well, in JSON, we don't call it object. We just call it document, as we've seen here. In our database, we just call it document. Array is the same. Boolean is the same. Null is the same. But now, as you can see in JSON, we have more data. Object ID, I told you, that's the data type. And we have it in JSON. We don't have it in JSON. Date here, date object, it will give me information about the date. We have it in JSON. We don't have it in JSON. Binary data, so 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, and stuff like that. Binary data, we can have it in JSON. We cannot have it in JSON. Timestamp will give me the current time. Regular expression, I can use it in JSON. I cannot use it in JSON. A min and max, if I have a number, I can have them in JSON, but I cannot have them in JSON. Undefined also, as we've seen, it's not part of JSON, so it's not data type for JSON, but with JSON, we can have this data type. So why did this MongoDB team using JSON? Simply because storing and retrieving the data, it will be much faster, and also JSON, it comes with more data type, allow us to store more efficiently, simply like that. Is the idea clear? Yes, no?
Yes.
Great. Now in MongoDB, of course, I'm just going through those guys here. I'm going through your guy. Where is it? Just close this one. I'm just going through those. That's it. I'm trying to explain a few of those. So we have validation and middleware. So I already know how to create a schema. So if I want to create a schema, all I have to do, I can just create a new schema. So I can just say new Mongo schema, and I can pass my different field. So here, for example, if I'm using for the user, and I'm saying name, I can define the type if I want to. For example, it's string, and require is true. So require is true. That's what you call validation. We can validate our different fields. That means if I try to add a new user and he does not add the name, MongoDB will not allow you to store this document. It will not accept it. Why? Because we have some validation here, and this validation require is true. If I have a number, as you can see here, I can also put like max and min, and max and min, both of them are validator provided by MongoDB. So if I try also to add an age, which is 100, for example, in this example, MongoDB, it will give you an error. It will not allow you to post your data. Rules, now in rules here, also it will be string, and we have an enum. Can anyone tell me what is an enum? Any idea what is an enum? Yeah. What is an enum? So enum, we don't have it in JavaScript. We have it in TypeScript. We have it in Java. We have it in most strongly typed language. The idea of the enum, if I have only few choices. So I'm saying the rule here, the type, it will be string. Now, when it comes to the rule, when whatever type of user here, when it comes to rule, I have 3 options, and only 3 options. The rule here, it could be a normal user, it could be an admin, it could be moderator. I cannot have any other values. That's why we're using enum. So enum help us to define when we have a small choices, few choices. And now what I'm doing here, I'm telling you, okay, the rule, it will be string, but they can only be either user or admin or moderator. That's it. If you try to enter any other value, it will not accept it. Clear?
So in the future, in the future project with my Amazon, we'll input this one role, because we will have the user and admin. So indeed, the admin can delete and so on. Yeah, it's this one.
So we can use just an enum with these 2 values, user and admin, and we close it. Now, if when the user try to register and he whatever, if we try to add a new user with any value, if it's not user or admin, it will not accept it, simply like that. And that's simply the enum. We use enum, by the way, with a lot. We use it with days. Why days? Because, for example, we have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, so we have 7 days. We cannot have anything else except these 7. We can use it with months. Why? Because we have only 12 months and we cannot have any other value. So enum are very powerful, very useful when we have few choices and we only want to accept these few choices, simply like that. And their syntax is very similar to array, as you can see. It's very similar to array in JavaScript. Okay, we can also use match. So what is match? Match, simply here, as you can see, I'm saying I want the email to be string, and I want to match these regular expressions. That means whenever I pass any email, what MongoDB is going to do, it will try to match it with this regular expression. If there is a match, it will allow you to add a new user. It will not make any problem. But if it does not match this regular expression, it will throw an error. And also this one is type of validator here. So we can use if we want to match. For us, we don't use it because we already have a function which will validate the email, but you can do that if you want to. Cool? Yes?
Oh, so we don't need to use the functions, the util functions. We can put it here and it will be the same.
It will be the same, but I prefer to do more in JavaScript because in the future, maybe you end up with a company who is not using MongoDB. It's using SQL. And like that, you will be able to apply it no matter what because you are doing it in JavaScript. You get the point?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, now here we can add by the way, we can add our own validator. So what do I mean by that? Let's say I have a score, something like that. Score is the number, and I need to add this key validate here. It will be an object, and here I can add a validator function. So I can write my own function. And what's going on here, if I have a validator function, what MongoDB is going to do, it will take these numbers and it will try to compare it with the function here. It will try to modulus with 2. If the result is 0, it's fine. If not, it will throw this message. And it will tell you the result, which will be the number you are passing here, the prop.value. It will give you the number you are passing is not an even number. You can add your own function, but that's not for beginner, actually. Again, it's not for beginner, so let's just keep it. Fine. Is it okay? Just know that you could have your own validator function. Yes?
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay, now let's go to the middleware. Now in MongoDB also allow me few middlewares. For example, if I have user schema, so as you can see, I have a user schema. What do I want to do now? I want to, before creating any user, I want to run a function. If I want to do that, well, I can use something called middleware. And MongoDB allows us with a lot of middleware. For example, I can just say user schema.pre. That means before you create a user, or before, as yes, pre-save, before you save the user, I want you to check this one. I want to check the password. If the password is being modified, I want you to replace the password with the hash password. Again, we can do that for the user, but we are not using this one. Why? Because we are hashing our password before even we are saving it to MongoDB. Before we're creating an object user and before we are saving it. But know that you can do that if you want to. Is the idea clear? So again, if I have like define schema, user schema, I can use a pre. So pre here, it's user schema here, it will give you a lot of function. One of them is pre. There's pre, there is post, there is a lot of them. But the idea here, I can pass, say here, okay, before you save any user, I want you to run this function. Simply like that. It is possible to do that in MongoDB. But what we did here, when we create our user, we just took the user password, and after that, we did the hash using another library, which is bcrypt, and we hash it already, and voila. But you can do it in MongoDB if you want to. Cool.
So here we don't need to use the bcrypt. It's a built-in function, the hash password.
Yes. But the idea is, I don't want to use this one here again, because in the company, in any no, is this one you mean hash password? No, Agnieszka, hash password, it's bcrypt. It's coming from bcrypt. So you need to use bcrypt anyway. But what's coming from MongoDB here is pre-save. This is modified here. This one coming from MongoDB. This is modified, so it will check the password if it's been modified or not. If it's been modified here, we are updating this. That means this user password, I want it to be equal to the hash password, this dot password. So here we have a function hash password, and we are using bcrypt again. But what MongoDB allow you to do, allow you to run the function. Every time you save the user, it will check what it's going to do here. It will check the password. If you modify the password, it will hash the password, then it will save it. So that's one way here. But in our website, we do not allow the user just to modify password or do it like that. We shouldn't allow the user to do so, unless some websites allow to do so. But yeah, so if that's the case, if you want your website to allow to do that, it will be a great idea to use this one in MongoDB. And what's going to do each time the user try to save some information or modify the password, it will check this means the person here, or the user, this current user. This dot is modified. So if it is modified here, the password is modified, it will return true or false. If it returns true, then we say this user dot password, I want it to equal to hash password, this dot user. So we are hashing the password simply like that. Is it okay? And remember, this is a middleware. That's the reason why I need to use. That's the reason why I need to use.
Yeah, next.
It's a next. So because it's a middleware, I need to have a next. And if I don't do next, my code here, it will stop inside this function and it will not try to save or do anything for the user. So I need to pass next because it's a middleware. Don't worry about that. Again, these subjects are not for beginner. We don't need that for now. Later on, if you work on a company which is working with MongoDB, you can advance yourself, learn more. It's fine. It's not a problem. Security and authentication here. So let's require user to log in. Well, if you want to log into any database, for example, in MongoDB, if I go to my MongoDB Atlas, like that, we have something called database access. And of course, database access, that will be my administrator who is the admin here, because I have one user. And this guy here uses authentications. The authentication they are using is called SCRAM. It's just some type of authentication to make sure that this current user has all access. Of course, I can add a new user if I want to. And when I add a new user, I can allow him to read, or I can allow him to update, or I can allow him to delete. So I can give him certain functionality for this specific user. Because when you work on a project, you will not be the only one working on the project. And if some of the developers that you are not, for example, if they are junior, you are afraid maybe they will delete something, well, you can create a user here, and after that, you can just give him maybe read access only. You will not allow him, for example, to update or delete. Yeah. Any point? So this actually, it's already there here. I mean, you can define custom rules here. I don't have a lot of, let me try to create a user actually. If I try to create a user here, it will be with password, password authentication, new user. So I can just Jack, new user, I can just say test or something like that for now. And after that, add built-in rules. So if I click on this one here, so as you can see, I can allow him to read and write to any database, only read any database. So I can here choose the rule what I want to. I won't allow him to read any database or only read specific one. And like that, I can restrict my user to a specific property here. Either he will be able to read a specific database, or to read or write to a specific database. So yeah, we can define, as you can see, different rule for our specific user if we want to. Cool? Yes, no?
Yeah.
Okay. Rule-based access control, you can create a rule to specify permission, like read only. We just talk about it. Encryption here, all the time when you are transferring your data, you need to encrypt your data. Now, when you encrypt data in production, as I told you, normally we are using HTTP or HTTPS in production. In production, are we using HTTP or HTTPS?
HTTP.
No. If you go to render, just go to render any website you render. Any website you deploy to render and check. For example, let's just go to the hotel here. Click on that. Is it HTTP or HTTPS?
Yeah, okay, with S.
Of course, it's with S. So all the time in production, we use HTTPS protocol. Now, HTTPS means it's just using something called SSL or TLS. What's that supposed to mean? Well, that means when I'm trying to transfer data, when I'm trying to send data in my request, it will encrypt this data. And like that, even if someone try to access my data, able to access my data, he will not be able to decrypt my data. So this HTTPS is using this SSL TLS certificate. What's going on here, it's whenever you are sending the data, it's automatically encrypting your data. And when it comes to reach the server, it will decrypt them. And like that, you will have your data. So it's quite important. You don't have to worry about that in production. And of course, in development, you don't have to worry about that because it's in your local machine. So that's the reason why in development we use HTTP and we don't use HTTPS. But in production, I mean, if you are not in your local machine, everyone can access your data and your request. So you cannot use HTTP, you need to use HTTPS. Cool? Yes, no?
Yep.
Yeah, this one I'm not going to explain because it's related to company enterprise. We don't have this version, but network accessing, I'm going to talk about it. So if I go to here, as you can see, we have network access here. So network access, simply what's telling you here, you can define or you can add a different IP you want to access to your database. And here I'm doing 000/0. That means everyone can access my database if you want to. Of course, to just see my database, not to modify them and no. Here they will just be able to access my database. That's okay. Now, sometimes this one considers security issue. For us, it's not a problem. I mean, no one coming to take our hotel. But what we can do here normally, if we have a website in a specific host, see, we have something called connect, right? If you click on connect, notice what it will give you. It will give you different IP here, static IP. And you have one IP, two IP, three IP. So it's telling you here that your website is going to use these different IP. So what I can do here, I can take all these three API. I'm sorry, I'll take these three IP here and I can add them here to my IP address. And that could be a solution. You got the point. So whenever you are dealing with a specific host, with Render, it's super simple. As I told you, just click on connect and it will give you the different IP addresses that will be used by your website. And after that, you can add them directly to your IP address. And like that, it will make a connection. If you don't like that, all you have to do, so let me delete this one. You can add an IP address, and this IP address here is allow access from anywhere, as you can see. If you do that, you have 000, and you can confirm. You need to add this 1000 or a specific IP. Other that, when you're sending a request to Atlas MongoDB Atlas to grab your data, it will not allow you. So if the IP is not listed here, it will not allow to access your data. So you'll not get your data at all. But now I'm saying 000/0. That means it's fine. Whoever send a request to my data, he can get my data. And that's the reason why now if I go to my hotel here and do these ones, that's the reason why I have my data here. If I go to MongoDB now and I try to, where is it? I try to remove this one, delete this one. And now I have only this IP, that's my current IP. And if I do that and now I go back to my website, and wait some time, notice I'm not receiving the data anymore. See, I have a problem. So as you can see, I don't get the data well because simply, sorry, this render here is using specific IP and send a request to my MongoDB Atlas, but MongoDB Atlas here, it has only a list of API it can take the data from, and that's my local machine here. And it's not on renders. That's the reason why it's not giving you here. At the end, see, request failed. But now if I go to my MongoDB now, either I can add these different three IP here, or simply I can just say I want to access from anywhere. I confirm it. It will take some time to be activated. So let's just wait a little bit. Okay. And now it's active. And now here, if I go to my website, where's my website? Click. And I refresh, it may take, voila, and now I have my data, as you can see. So it allow, because I'm saying, okay, I want you to accept the request from any IP, and as you can see now, it can grab my data and so on. Is this idea clear how we are using IP access?
Could you remove this 00 and put the IP from render so we can see? Because the IP address, they are especially for the Hotel Mern. But if you will create another project, there will be the same IP addresses?
No, of course not.
Different?
Of course not, they will be different.
So then because you would like to all your websites to work, so you have to have all the IP addresses here if you don't want to use 000.
Yes, all the time you need to add your IP address. And that's the reason why I don't like to use this one, because each time here I need to add my IP addresses. Confirm. So I need to add all of them now. And let's see, hopefully it will work. Let's see. You are deploying your changes. So now if I go to my hotel, I should not have my hotel, of course, as you can see. Thank you. Hotel refresh. Refresh. Yeah, now all three active. I go to now my hotel, click Happy Agnieszka now, still working.
Okay. But if I have more projects, so I need to have all the IP.
Of course. So that's the reason why I don't like to add all of this stuff here. I mean, for me, it's annoying. But you can do that. Of course, it's better for security, by the way. For security, is much better. But where's my current IP? You will only
94?
let me delete. Let me just delete all of them, and then after that, I can add my IP. Add current IP. You need to add your current IP, of course. Add current IP. That's my IP, and also I want to add 0. Allow all from everywhere. But as I told you here, when you render your application, when you deploy your app here to render, you can click on that and it will give you a bunch of IP, and you can just add them here to network access. Like that, you will get your data. If you don't like that, you can just add this 1000/0, which will be accessed from everywhere, and voila. It will work with every project. But of course, that's considered, you need to be careful with this one. If you really have very sensitive data, you shouldn't use 000/0. You should only use the ID or the IP is being provided by the host you are trying to, or you are deploying a project to. Should be simple now. Let's go here. Best practice for securing MongoDB. Enable authentication and user rule. Well, you should always enable your user's authentication. And so if I go back to MongoDB, for example, as I told you, we have different user, and I, as an admin user, can do everything. And whenever I create a user, I should allow him, depending on his need, either to just read the data or read the data, update the data. So you need to define different rules for different users. It's okay. It's a good idea always the time to use strong password. Limit network access. We just talk about this network access. So if I go back to network here, so if you don't want, you want your data to be very secure, it's not a good idea to add 000/0. What you can do, you can just go to the host you are deploying your project to, and then try to grab the different bunch of IP, which will give you, and then you can just add it to the network access. It will be more secure. But now in my example, I'm not storing any sensitive data, so it's okay. I mean, it's fine. What else? Keep MongoDB updated. It's always a good idea to all the time update MongoDB, because the update here, it's just trying to fix some bugs. All the time when you have an update, it will be fixed bugs, so it will be a good idea to keep it updated. If you're not using any feature in MongoDB here, if you are not using some feature here, it's just a good idea to turn them off, because I mean, if they are turned on and you are not using them, it could maybe for some reason it could create some security issue or something like that. So just shut them down if you are not using them. Turn off any MongoDB feature you are not using. Backup your data. It's always a good idea to back up your data, as you can see. So you can back up your data here as well. But backing up the data, it's done in the company, not for your personal project. It's done mostly for companies. And like each amount of times they're just backing up the data and saving them somewhere else, just to make sure that they have a copy of the data if something go wrong. What else? Talk about that user monitoring. Of course, in MongoDB, if I go just to a database here, so let me click on MongoDB. And if you go to click on the project, I have my cluster here. Of course, it doesn't give me a lot of functionality here because I'm using the free version. But when you are paid version, it will give you much future, a better future. So I can now here, as you can see for my cluster, I have some monitoring stuff I can do. So here I can check, for example, different connection has been done to. So here, from these dates, there was connection here, there was connection, here's a connection. At this time, there was no connection. Different networks being used here, different operation. So if I hover over them, it will show me, for example, if I do the connection here, it will show me different data here. And it's really good to monitoring just your cluster here to see in case you have too much requests at specific time or not. Yeah. Nothing else. If we have transaction in MongoDB, I'm going to explain it, and that's it. Actually, I'm not going to explain it. I'm just going to show you just how we can do transaction. Can anyone remember in SQL when we do transaction, what did we do in SQL? How could we do transaction in SQL? So we see that start transaction. Remember in SQL, we say start transaction. And then after that, we hear either we're going to commit or we're going to uncommit our changes. So what is the objective of transaction? Why do we need to do transaction? Anyone remember why do we need to do transaction? No? Well, let's say I want to modify my my database here. I want to modify some data in my MongoDB, but I am not sure if this modification, it will happen successfully or not. So if it does not happen successfully, I want to go back. I want to go back to the previous state. And that's what simply is transaction. So transaction here, when I start the transaction, now I'm going to do a lot of different changes on my database. If everything is okay, I'm going to commit these changes. If it's not okay, I'm going to roll back. That means all the changes I did, I'm going to just remove them. You remember that or not? No? Oh my God. Okay, fine. In MongoDB, you don't need to know what's the transaction here. Just if you want to create a transaction here, you just use mangoes.start transaction. That's it. Of course, to start the transaction, it will take some time. That's why we're using await. So we just say mangoes.start transaction, and we need to create a session. So session.start transaction, and here you can modify your database, whatever you want to. If you are happy with it, then you just say session.commit transaction, and this one, it will make the change, permanent change to your collection. And if you don't want that, all you have to do just session.upload transaction. Just simply like that. So first step, you need to start the transaction. Of course, you need to create a session. And to create a session first, you just will use await mangoes.start transactions. That's my session. Your session, it will be an object. And now here I will say session.start transaction. And here we'll do a lot of changes in your database. If you are happy with these changes, all you have to do is just say session.commit transaction. If you are not happy with this change, you want to go back, just session.upload transaction. Simply like that. And at the end, when you are done with it, with this session here, you need to close this session. And that's if we put it in finally, just session.end session, simply like that. You don't need to understand it again. You just need to understand the concept here. If I have some changes I want to do to my database, but to my database or to my collection here, okay? To my different collection, my table here in MongoDB. If I want to do certain changes on this collection, I am not sure it will work or not. Well, what you can do simply, you can just use transaction. Transaction is some changes being done on your database, but they will not be, how can I say it? They will not be permanent. So either you want, after you made the changes, if you are happy with them, you can make them permanent. If you are not happy with them, you can roll back. You can go back, and if you go back, all these transactions you did, when you start the transaction, everything here, it will go back as they did not happen. So that's the idea of having transaction. So I'll do some calculation, but I'm not sure, some changes, some calculation, whatever in my database, but I'm not sure if they are okay or not. If I'm happy with them, well, I can commit them. And if I commit them, that means the change being done to my database and my collection here, it will be permanent. If I'm not happy, I can just say upload transaction. And if I upload transaction, everything I did since start transaction here, it will be just like deleted. It will be gone, simply like that. Is the idea clear? Not the code. Is the idea clear? Yes? No?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, you will not gonna use that, but just it's the idea here. Okay, if I want to create a transaction, I will just need to create a session. And to create a session, I need to use mango.start session here. It's just like a schema, something like that. So we will have this method here on Mangoes. Mangoes give us this method, start transaction. And now here I can just say session.start transactions, and I can make some changes on my collection, my different collection, my different document, my different whatever I want to change. After that, at the end, if I'm happy with this change, I can just say session.commit transaction. And if you say commit transactions, that means that change will be permanent into your database. If you are not happy with it here, you can just say session.upload transaction, and voila. Remember something, whenever you create a session, you need to close the session at the end. And that's the reason why in finally we just say session.end session, simply like that. In SQL, we don't have to close the session because SQL handles that, but in MongoDB, we need to close the session. That's basically everything here. I will just give you some practice or fine practice with Learn project in general. So you need to organize your code in general. What do I mean by that? Well, there's a lot of developers, they do not organize their code. If your code is not organized, it will not be scalable. That means if you want to add more feature to your server here, front end or back end, you'll not be able to do that. It will be really difficult to add different feature now to your code if your code is not organized. Your code, it will be like a spaghetti code. It will not be reusable. So the best way to write code, your code need to be organized. It need to be divided into different folders. And we've been doing, well, since day one, we've been doing everything like in very organized manner. So as you can see here in my server, all the logic we need to use routes. We use a folder, we have routes. We need to use controller, we are using controller. Module, we are using module. We need to use MVC, and we did use MVC. So MVC, it's just like architecture, how to build a server. M stands for module, so we have our module. V stands for view, whatever. C stands for controller. Controller we have, module we have, view we use EGS, if you remember, to render some template. But now, for now, we don't need it anymore because now we are treating our server just like an API. We're just asking it for the data and we render the data in our front end. So we are implementing a module view controller from day one, actually. It's a good idea to use environmental variable, and we are using it. So we have a lot of data which are very secret data. We don't want anyone to access them, so we can just put them inside our .env. Yeah, in MongoDB here, sometimes we can write our query efficiently. We don't write any query actually. And MongoDB or Mongo's make it very easy for us to deal with Mongo. So all I have to do, we are using some function. We are not rewriting any code. So don't worry about that. Use Mongo's for schema. We are using Mongo's for schema validation. Implement tokens. That's mean when you try to authenticate or authorize the user, you should use token. And actually, we've been implementing the token-based authentication using GWT since the beginning as well. You should handle error consistently, and we are handling all the error all the time. We should use a RESTful API design. So the idea here, if you have different endpoint, for example, let's say /login, /logout. So that's what you call endpoint. The problem is sometimes some developers, for example, let's pick the login. They say, for example, HTTP localhost /API/, and instead of saying something really login. Now, if I see login, I understand it's for login. It's very intuitive. I just know it's for login. But some of them, for example, will they not use login? For example, they will just type hero. And a hero here doesn't give any meaning for me. You should not use this endpoint here. So the endpoint you are using, they must be descriptive, they must be to the point, and anyone can read them. They could understand exactly what they are used for. And that was they're talking here for the RESTful API and endpoint here. Optimize front end. So in front end, actually, we are using React, so it's already optimized. And we are using component based, so it's quite fast, actually. So there's no problem like that. Secure the API and the server. We are securing our API and the server. And here they're suggesting actually a middleware or a package called Helmet. Now, Helmet, we will implement it in the next project as well. It's just like a course, if you remember. So course here, you just need to install it. And after that, you just say app.use Helmet, that's it. When you are using Helmet, make it really secure for the header. So it's secure your header. Everything with HTTP, it's really make sure that the header is being secure. It's really good idea all the time to add Helmet here to your server. It just make it a little bit more secure. CI/CD, that mean every time, so continuous development, continuous integration. All the time you have your server, you need to develop, you need to add more feature. And when you do this one here, after that, when you deploy these changes here, you need to make sure that these changes are working as intended. You can sometimes use some testing here, but for us, we are using testing already with Postman, so it shouldn't be any problem. And here, monitoring a log error, we're also using a log error, so we don't have any problem with that as well. I will show you something very quickly, so let me close this one. My project, and let's go to Amazon backend. I think I finished the backend if I'm not mistaken. If I just type npm run div, that's fine. So I made a few changes actually. And these changes we're going to study in the next project. So one of these changes, I've imported something called crossinf. Crossinf is just a library. I will not explain it for now. It's just a library help us to define what we call node-inf. Now you need to tell me what is node-inf. Well, as you can see, node-inf here, this is the variable. And this variable here, we can use it sometime for our advantage to know if we are in production or when we are in development. So this node-inf here, if we have this variable, we can know that we are in development and we are in production, because there is some stuff we want to do in development, we never want to do it in production. So what I did here in my script here, I just add crossinf, and that's the library we are using here, it's a new library. Why did I use this library? Because sometimes this variable node-inf, it just caused some trouble between different operating systems. So Windows, Mac, and Linux, sometimes the value is undefined. So if we just install this library here, and remember the library is in dev dependency. And what we can do here, we just say crossinf space node-inf, and I'm saying, okay, this variable node-inf, it's production. Why? Because I'm using node here. In production, normally we use node. If we are using node1, normally it will be development, simply like that. And now I can, if I want to access this variable, all I have to do process.inf node-inf, and like that, I will know if I am in production or I am in development. Don't worry about it. We'll study it in detail. I've also imported a new library here, which is called Helmet. We'll see quickly what is Helmet now. So that's Helmet. You just need to import it, and after that, you just need to use it simply like that. Where is it? Voila, like that. Of course, you can pass many different options here, but that's the simplest way to use Helmet. And you may tell me, oh, you're just using it this way. When we are using Helmet, actually, this Helmet using more than 16 other middleware. And this is 16 other middleware. They just help you to make your website or your server more secure. So it's always a good idea to add this Helmet. Maybe next project, I can show you some of these options to make it. So depending on your need, you can add more here option. It will be an object, of course. And you can add, just like here, just like JSON here, just like express.url encoded, you can have an object and then you have some option. Same idea, you can have an object and some option. Just know that this Helmet make our website or our server more secure. Now, for this environment variable, which I defined, which I install a library for it with this library, which is called crossinf. And I defined it here when I'm running my script. I define node-inf and development or in production here. Now I can use it actually. Why? How can I use it? Well, I can check process.inf node-inf. If it's development, I want you to use the logger, because the logger here, in reality, we should not use it in production. Normally, we use the log only in development, or only the developer should see the log, because the log helps us to see what different request has been done to our server. In production, we don't need it. And that's the reason here why I'm checking. If the process.inf.node-inf, that's the variable we define. If it's development, I want you to use this logger here. If it's not development, I don't want you to use it. Yes, no. We will study it in detail next project, but I just wanted to show you. Yeah?
Yeah, okay.
What else? Middleware, okay. Check user. Now, in the next project, I will need to create this middleware we call check user. I need to know if the user is admin or a normal user. Because if he's normal user, he should not be able to add a product. But if he is an admin, he should be allowed to add this product. Of course, to do that, I need to create a middleware, and now I can go to my route. Let's go to product here. And as you can see, that's my middleware, which is called check user. I need to import it just like a verify token. And then now here, I can pass it here. As you can see, check user, check user. So whenever the user is trying to add a product, he can get the product, that's fine. He can get one product, that's fine. But when he want to add a product or update a product or delete a product, I need to check the user here. So I need to pass a middleware here. This middleware, it will check the user. If the user is admin, it will allow him to create a product. If he is not admin, no. Same idea with put and delete. If he's admin, yes. If he's not admin, no. And now the question here is, how could I know that the user is admin or not? Any idea? How could I know if the user is admin or not?
We can store something in cookies or session storage.
We don't have to store anything because you already store it. So if I go to the user, and where is my token? So when I create my token, do you remember when I create my token, I told you we have something called payload, right? That's a payload. It's an object, right? So when I create my token, I told you this payload most of the time it will be user object. So what I'm doing here, when I'm creating my token, I'm saying, okay, I have a user and I'm passing user exists. So I'm passing all the user object. And user object here, it will include email, password, rule, and username. Voila. So I'm already saving this user object inside my token. So I make it easy now. Okay. As you know, every time the user, if he's logged in or not, of course, if he's logged in, if he's not logged in, he doesn't have token. Every time the user try to send a request to the backend, because my token is cookie, it's being added to the request and I'm receiving the token. Now, can I know if the user is admin or user from the token? Can I do that or not?
Yes.
How?
Role?
Well, it's quite simple, actually. First, I need to grab my token. How can I grab my token? It will come from the request.cookies. Request.cookies, as you know, if you go to verify token, it's the same. It's very small, same idea, very small. So it's very, this one here also, we are grabbing it from request.cookie. It's the same idea exactly. So first we need to grab our token. We go to request.cookies, and now I may have multiple cookies, but I don't want all these cookies. I want only the token. Well, if I don't have token, what's that supposed to mean? If I have no tokens, that is the user is logged in or not?
No.
Oh, simple. If no tokens, then I'm just telling him you are not authorized because you are not logged in. Okay. Now, if the token, if user has token, I need now to validate the token, right? To make sure that the token is valid or not. How can I do that? Well, I can use GWT verify, and here I will have token, the user. Then I will use process.env.token secret, which is coming from .env. And then here for this function, again, if I go to the logger, verify token, same idea. As you can see here, I have an error and I have data, but we did not use the data before because we did not need them. But now in check user, as you can see, now I need to use the data. Okay, but what will be the data here? Any idea? What will be the data here? Any idea what will be the data here?
It's the user role, yeah. If it's user, admin, or moderator.
So data here is an object, and inside it I will have. What I will have. So it is, see, that's data. It's an object. Inside it I have a user object. So this data here, as you can see, that's the payload is my data. It is an object, and inside it I have the user object. Remember, the user here is an object. So it will be object inside an object. Okay, fine. Now, what should I do? Well, I need to check here. If data.user, that means if I have the user object inside my data, and inside the user I have a rule here, and this rule is not equal to admin, then I'm gonna just return, just tell him you're forbidden, you are not allowed. You are not allowed because you are not an admin. But if I have a user object, which I should have, if I have a token, if I use user object inside the data, and inside the user is a rule here, if it is admin, because here we say if it's not admin, else it will be an admin. If it's admin, all I have to do, I just have to use next, because next it will allow me to go now to the next controller, or the next middleware, or the controller. And that's how we can validate, or you can check the user rule simply. I will explain it in detail again next project, but yeah, that's very similar. It's very similar to verify token, as you can see. But before in verify token, we did not need to use the data. So the data here, it will be the payload here. When you create your token, you pass an object, and inside it you have a user data or user object. And that's the data here. I will grab it from here. And that's actually the reason why we put the user object inside the token, because we need to do a lot of verification related to the user. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay, that should be enough about MongoDB and stuff like that. So I've defined what NoSQL database are. So NoSQL database, we talk about it. So it's just not like SQL. It's a bit different. We still have database, but we have collection. So we don't have tables, we have collection. And yeah, inside this collection, we could have document. So just document here. Document, it will be just like one row. For example, document user ID, something like that, name and stuff like that. As advantage or disadvantage of using Mongo NoSQL, well, using NoSQL is just much faster. It's better, especially for small projects, and especially using it with the merge stack. So that means if I have my backend node, it would be a great idea to use MongoDB. Why? Because simply MongoDB, as you've seen, it stores the data in a format very similar to JavaScript object notation or JSON. So JSON is very close to JavaScript object, as you know. We just need to convert it, and after that, use it. Introduction to MongoDB, we've talked about that document object. Describe the JSON. I'll just talk about JSON. So JSON is just binary JSON. It is JSON, but we're adding a lot of different other type, like object ID, like date, like undefined, and like that. Install and setup, we already know how to install and set up both of them. MongoDB server and also Mongoose, it's really simple. Crowd operation, you already know how to do create, read, update, and delete all the documents using MongoDB or Mongoose. Show how to use MongoDB shell. We've seen how to use MongoDB shell. So it's command line. As I showed you before, you can insert a document you want to, you can update document, you can delete document, and so on. Data modeling and schema, discuss the importance of data modeling in MongoDB. Well, it's very important because whenever you're trying to build a specific collection, you need to know what different data you need for this collection. For example, if I have a user, I need to know what do I need for this user. I need an email. Do I want to make this email unique or not? So making a schema here or designing my collection or my schema here in MongoDB is super important. Also, if I need to make any connection, like foreign key between one table and another, like before we seen, if I have an item in the basket, I need to make a connection between this item and user. And in order to do so, I can use ref, and then I can reference the user collection. And after that, yeah, I can just make it require true. I'm assuming everything is okay because we're using that again and again. Define schema using Mongoose. Yeah, that should be simple. How to create a module based on schema. We've seen this one is super easy. Validator and middleware, I just explained them now. Query MongoDB with Mongoose, we've seen that. Filtering, we've seen that also if you want to filter. So filtering is super simple, actually. I can just even show you here. So I can just pass the first object, which will be filtering. And now what I can do, for example, I want to filter where the something category, for example. I want the category here. So I need to pass the key. Come on. Category. I don't think I even need this one. So category, and I want the category to be, for example, I know. So if I do that, I have nothing. Why? Because I don't have anyone with category sum, as you can see. So that's simply what we call filtering here. So yeah, the first object we are passing to our MongoDB is the filter object, and you can define any field you want to and any value you want to. That should be simple. What else? Filtering, sorting. We've seen sorting project data. That's fine. Security, as I told you. Authentication and rule based in MongoDB. So when you're Atlas, you need to add different user, and you need to give this different user different rules depending on what do you want. Best practice for secure. Well, yeah, best practice is just not allow anyone or any IP to access my MongoDB Atlas cluster. Add different user with different rules, and yeah, transaction. We just seen that transaction is not super important, but to use the transaction, all I have to do, I can use mangoes dot create transaction. So actually create session, so it will return me a session. And now after that, I can just say session dot start transaction. I can do a lot of modification to my collection. If I'm happy with it, I can just say session dot commit. Commit session. What was the rule? I think it was session dot commit changes. If not, you can just roll back the changes. That should be fine. And deployment, I will provide a guide to deploy MongoDB in various environments, including on-permission cloud. Well, for us, we are just deploying our MERS stack to render. And when we deploy to render, and I want to access my my database on the cloud, this host give me different, as you can see, give me different IPs. And what I need to do here, I need to include these IPs inside my MongoDB. Here, if I don't add them, I will not be able to access the data. So let's go to here. Okay, project 0. So what we are talking about simply is just network access, this one here. So each time you are deploying your project, you need to add your IP here, or if you want to make it available for everything, just 000/0. But you need to be careful with this one. What else? Monitoring and maintaining MongoDB cluster. Well, it's quite simple. We've just seen your cluster here also. So if you go to your cluster here, and where's my clusters? So if you go to your cluster here, we have something monitoring, and here some different stuff here. If I just have a role as them, I have view monitoring as well. It will give you different information about how many requests has been done to your cluster. And like that, you may know how many connection or how many requests has been done to your cluster. That should be fine as well. Real world cases we've seen. I mean, some real world cases you really need to divide your code in a way it will be scalable, because if your code is not divided well, it will not be reusable, it will not be scalable. And like that, I think all the checks here should be fine. If you have any question, you can ask about this check. If not, you can just check those so I can close your checking issue. Question?